Western Cape High Court has given an alleged rape survivor the right to speak about her experience and name the ex-boyfriend she claims attacked her. She sought to appeal a decision made by the Cape Town Magistrates Court which barred her from sharing her story. Well, this comes after her ex-boyfriend took her to court in November 2020 for naming him on social media, claiming that her posts caused him harm and reputational damage. Then he was granted a protection order. However, the High Court judge found that the magistrate misdirected himself. Well, joining us now live to speak on this is the Women's Legal Centre's attorney, Chriscy Blouws. Thank you so much for joining us, Chrissy. As a woman, I'm always inclined to accept a woman's claim that she's been raped or attacked. It's just something that automatically I would understand and accept, because to accuse somebody of that is such a trauma in itself. But what if there is somebody, Chrissy, who hasn't been raped and then names the alleged perpetrator on social media and she hasn't laid charges and he hasn't done anything wrong?
Thank you very much. I think that we have to distinguish between the context. And the context is that within South Africa, our rape statistics show that women are raped by the second, that we have a criminal justice system which fails women, which do not believe them, and there is stigma and discrimination within society that forces women into fear and silence. And then the very notion that there is the 1% or 2% of women who do lie further contributes to the main reason why women then go back into silence and go into the methodology that I will not be believed if I do speak out. The point that you're making is an old point that comes through our patriarchal society and comes through our historical context, where women have always been treated with suspicion. It was a cautionary rule. It was called this rule that before believing a woman, treat her with the suspicion that she may be lying, it may be gossip, and that she may be doing this to get back at a man. And that is what is so significant about this judgment, is that the judgment does away with all of those negative stereotypes, in that it recognizes and it reaffirms what our constitutional court has said, in that those stereotypes threaten women back into silence, perpetrators threaten women back into silence, and as a result, this is how perpetrators live with impunity and are able to get away with their actions against women.
I'm absolutely with you, Chrissy, and I think the stigma of reporting and the way women are treated is secondary trauma in so many cases. I've covered so many, femicides, rapes, murders, etc. And it's devastating to see women and their perpetrators have to face one another, and for them have to go through the absolute terrifying assault again in court on cross-examination. But does this not open up the door to abuse too by women?
So this is why we're so emboldened by the judgment, in that the judges in this matter specifically highlighted how the context of gender-based violence in South Africa and the lived reality of women who survive sexual violence must be at the forefront of the determination of these matters, because then we will understand that, and the judges had said this specifically in their judgment for our client, based on her facts. She did not have to go and report him, and him being convicted of rape was not a precondition for her to be able to speak freely about her experience, because the judges recognized that where women do speak, it was her right to speak freely. And we must remember that the right to freedom of expression, to express yourself and to speak about your experience, is also a right contained within our Constitution. And this judgment reaffirms that. It reaffirmed her right to speak freely about the experience. It recognized that her speaking about her experience was done in solidarity with other women, was done in the public interest to warn other women against the same perpetrators, and was done as a method to find healing and build community outside of the criminal justice system, which you have pointed out often results in no convictions and secondary victimization of women. And that is why we are emboldened that the judges in this matter specifically found that the magistrate in the Cape Town Magistrates Court was incorrect to draw a negative inference from the fact that she had never reported and that he was not convicted of rape. And the judges set out in this case that her ex-boyfriend did not need to be convicted and found guilty of rape for her to speak about her truth, her experience, and to call him a rapist.
Chrissy, quick question. Does this need confirmation by the Constitutional Court?
It's the judgment, while we are very inspired by the judgment, it is one of the aspects in law where a judgment is based on the facts of every case. And so we also just have to always have caution around the different lived realities and the different instances in which women speak out. Because on the facts of this case, our client did not speak out publicly. She spoke out in a safe space, in a closed group, which was anonymous. And at the time of the outrage and the national outcry within South Africa, in which women said, #AmyNets, in which women said, after the death of Uyanene, we have had enough, and took to the streets to protest, people released private messages from social media groups and put out perpetrators' names. And what her ex-boyfriend then did was to target her and not the person who actually put out all of the messages. But what is still positive about the judgment is that it reaffirmed the rights of women who experience sexual violence in the context of gender-based violence within South Africa to speak freely about the perpetrators and about the instances. But we must remember that when it comes before the court, every case will be determined on its own facts. And so another case might not be determined similarly, and that's why we continue the work that we do, because we have several other clients within the same position or who are being sued for defamation after naming their perpetrators and speaking about abuse. And so the Women's Legal Center continues its work to set precedent for other women, to have an effect on all women within South Africa, and to move to set precedent up into the highest courts, our constitutional courts, to affirm that women are able to speak freely about gender-based violence in the context that it is a way to stop the scourge of this pandemic, which the South African president has called gender-based violence in South Africa.
Chrissy, it's a fascinating judgment, and I'll be very interested to see what kind of precedent it does set when you bring other cases. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Chriscy Blouws from the Women's Legal Centre.